I think we can skip introductions. If you weren't here before, you can come up and say hi later on. The requirements for this session were to create a knowledge base web template. So whatever we built yesterday needs to all be packed up together into a single web template so that we can create a site based on that template that will already have all the necessary features activated and the necessary pages created. We will include all the features from the base solution, so we will add the articles, add the pages, add the branding that you already got a sneak peek of in the previous session, and we will adjust the homepage. So you will see all of that during this session. And we will start off with some web template basics. Then we'll talk about how to create a web template, about using a web template, and then we'll do an extensive demo of how it would actually work and what it looks like in code. So Waldek will start off with a bit of web template basics. I'm not throwing that.
So when SharePoint 2010 came out, Microsoft came out with a new idea for templating sites. In SharePoint 2007, we had web template or site templates, which were the STP things. And we could create site definitions. And when SharePoint 2010 came out, Microsoft thought of a new approach or new way of templating sites. And that idea is called web templates. And in a way, they are comparable to site definitions, depending what you are trying to achieve. You can achieve the same results, but there are some differences that are quite important. So probably the first and the very most important difference between site definition and web template is that if you create a site based on a site definition, you are not allowed to change that site def, because SharePoint has the reference to the schema, and if you would revert the site to that site definition, it will break. So depending on what you are trying to do, it might not. Still, the best approaches or the recommended approaches never to change the schema of a site definition after you have created sites of it. If you compare that to the web template, is because there is no reference between the site and the web template that you have used, you can see basically the web template as a playlist, you are allowed to update it. So if you want to add some new functionality to the web template, you can. Another thing that is worth noting is the fact that site definitions are deployed always to the farm. They are deployed to the SharePoint root, and you can create site collections and sites of them, but they are available in the whole farm. If you compare it to the web templates can be deployed either on a specific site collection or the whole farm. So the choice is yours. And another thing that is important for you to keep in mind, that since web templates can be deployed on a scope of a site, they can be used in sandbox solutions, and with that, they can be used in SharePoint Online. So how it works, what it is, web template is very comparable to the site definition, with exception that there is no webtemp.xml. Web template consists basically of two files, one of which is the elements.xml, which defines the web template, and there you have the ONET.xml, which is very familiar to the one that you know from the IDEFs. When you create a web template, the choice is up to you, whether you want to deploy it on a site collection or the ARM scope. No matter your choice, it's going to work. So if you, for example, create a site that you want to have, or a template that you want to have available only within particular site collection, what you have to do is to scope the feature responsible for installing the web temp to site. However, if you want to create a web template that should be available within the whole farm, within the whole enterprise, just create exactly the same feature, but then use the farm scope, right? And many people think that if you want to create site collection, so you want to create it from Entra admin, you have to have web template deployed to the farm, otherwise it's not going to appear in a list. yes, it will not appear in a list. However, what you can do is you can create a site collection without template. Then you can go to that site, upload or activate the site collection scoped feature that is going to install the web template on that particular site. And with that, you can go back to the root, and you can then apply your web template to that site, having exactly the same result as if you would create site collection and pick the template in Enter Admin. So you can do both, right? How you create one? So web template is always based, in a way, linked to a site def. And the only way you see that is when you create a site based on a web template, what it will have is it will have a reference to the configuration and the ID of the site definition that you chose as a base. Other than that, there is no link at all. And so the rule for that is always try to choose a site definition which is as close as possible to what you have in your app temp as a base, right? Once you know which one you want to choose, you then create in your project an empty element, not module, empty element. And in the elements.xml, you have to add the web template element and fill in info such as display name of your web template and the base site definition, configuration, and ID in there. Optionally, you can also add things like images, description, and stuff. And with that, the last thing that you have to have is to fill in the ONET.xml. And since you have a site definition as a base, what you can do, and what you actually should do, is to get the configuration of your site definition, paste that as a base for your app template, and then remove from it everything that is not allowed there. For example, a module, right? And once you have that, you have the base, and from that point on, you can start adding new functionality to your template. Miriam is going to tell you more about what you can and cannot have in the web templates ONET.xml.
So there are a couple of things that aren't supported in web templates that were supported in site definitions. Now, these aren't really shocking. Probably the most shocking one is the modules element, which is used in your site definition to create pages. This means that if you want to create pages in your web template, you'll have to create a feature to create those pages. It's not difficult, it's just a little bit of a different approach. So it's not a problem that that element is not available in your web template. There's also a couple of components that aren't available in your web template. The first one is file dialog post processor. So who's ever used that in their custom site definition? Yeah, me neither. And the same thing is true for the external security provider. It's not something that's being used a lot, so it doesn't matter that it's not available anymore. We also have the server email footer that's not available in your web template, but that wasn't used a lot either. So, we're fine. We can just strip all this from the ONET.xml that we copy from our site definition. We will copy it so that we have a bit of inspiration. It's a lot of XML. We don't want to be typing all of that. So stripping it is easier than actually writing it. Once we created our web template and we deployed it, either at our site collection scope or at our farm scope, we can also use it to create sites from it from code. So what it would be, instead of having the name and then the configuration ID, which we would have if we would be using site definitions, we now have the feature GUID and the name of the web template that we need to use. Be aware of the brackets, because that cost me a day preparing for this one. You need brackets around the GUID in order for this to work. You can see a code example here. It's probably too small, but you can see it later on, or you can try it yourself. You can obviously also do this in PowerShell. So the sites that we created based on it, we use this approach in PowerShell, and I think Ben will show that later this afternoon. A couple of other limitations to web templates. The first one is you can't use feature stapling with your web templates, but it doesn't matter. Because we can change our web templates after we created sites based on it, you can simply add or remove features to or from the ONET.xml. So you can simply add, if you want to add features, you can add features to the site features or the web features elements in your ONET.xml after you created sites based on your web template. So that doesn't matter. So we don't really need feature stapling in this case because we used feature stapling with site definitions to help us adjust, make modifications to existing site definitions that we already created sites based on, or to modify out-of-the-box site definitions. The other thing that's not available, and this is really not available, is the variations hierarchy. So should you choose to go down the path of using the variations hierarchy, in that case, you won't be able to use web templates. But you're in a difficult spot then anyway. It's important to understand in what order sites are provisioned, either when you create a site use a site definition or when you create a web template. So if you're using a web template to provision your site, the first thing that will happen is the URL for that site will be reserved. So because that's the first thing, in some cases you will find that when your site creation failed, you can't create a new site on the same URL because that URL was already stored somewhere in the database, even though no sites exist on that URL. The next thing that will happen is that everything that's in the global ONET.xml, which is a special ONET.xml that's stored in the global folder, so it's not really part of any site definition, but it's used for all the site definitions and all the web templates except for the blank site definition. So it will create some stuff that's specified in there. So basically the basics of your site. The reason that this is not being used for the blank site definition is because in that case the site wouldn't be blank anymore. So they had to do some special stuff to make sure that the blank site stays blank. The next step is if you're creating a site collection, your site collection scoped features in the order in which they are defined in the ONET.xml will be activated. If you're creating a subsite, SharePoint will verify that all the site collection scoped features that are specified in your ONET.xml are already activated on the site collection. If they are not, SharePoint will throw an error and will not create your site. So be aware of this. We had this problem in our solution. We wanted to be able to create subsites based on our knowledge base web template. And that basically meant that we had to remove all our custom site scoped features from the ONET.xml and create web scoped features that would activate those features at the site collection level if they weren't already activated. This might not be what you want in all cases. You don't want to just activate, for instance, the publishing infrastructure on your site collection because that has serious implications for that site collection. It will change it. In our case, it doesn't really matter because we're adding some web parts and branding to it. It's not that risky. But be aware of this. This was different in SharePoint 2007. In SharePoint 2007, SharePoint would activate all the site collection scoped features on the site collection level, even though you were creating a subsite. The next step is that all the site scoped features in the order in which they are defined in the ONET.xml will be activated. And the last step is that any list instances that are specified in your ONET.xml will be activated, or will be created, sorry. So a couple of best practices. The first one, we already talked about this, consider the number of features. More features is slower site creation. The most I've seen was 64 features in one web template, and it took about an hour to create the site or before it just crashed. You also want to consider the scope of the features in relation to subsite creation. That's what I just explained. And you want to use the feature to provision the site's welcome page, and Wallach will show that in the demo in a bit. What you also want to do is you want to store information about the web template that was used to create the site and the version of that web template that was used to create the site. Because after the site has been created, it only knows about the base site definition that you specified for it. It has no knowledge of what template was used to create the actual site. So you want to store probably the name of the web template, maybe the feature of that the web template was deployed in, and the version number of that web template, of that feature. The reason for that is if you ever want to make changes to your existing site, if you ever want to do an upgrade, maybe run some code, iterate through your sites, you want to know which feature you had and what functionality was available within that site. And the only way to know that is if you store it the moment you create your site. There's no way to determine that after your site has been created already. So with that, let's look at what it actually looks like in Visual Studio.
So before we start, let me ask you first, who in a room did not see the web template, SharePoint project item template that Wictor and I built in the Dev 202 yesterday? Okay, there are a few hands in the room. So as I said, every time you want to create a web template, you have to take a few steps, like picking a IDEF, creating empty element, copy the ONET, and there's more, right? Because as Miriam said, you also have to have a feature that's going to stamp your site with the name and version number of the web template that has been used. And one more feature that you need is the feature to provision the welcome page, right? So you could do all of those manually, but yesterday, Wictor and I showed you a web template, SharePoint project item template that we have created that makes it really easy for you. Yes, we're not going down that way. So if I click right on the project and I'll pick add, I will get new item. And from the list of available spits, as Paul asked for me to say, he just wanted to have fun. Let me get web template ISC SharePoint project item template, and here I will add my template. That's going to be the internal name. And I will click add, and with that, the SharePoint project item template is going to ask me first display name, so that's exactly the name that you will see in UI. And then it's going to ask me which site definition that is available in my farm, which the SPI template has retrieved, I want to use as a base. So first, let's start with a team site. And I click OK, and it's going to automatically create and add everything that I need, and even more. That one comes actually from the tools, and I don't need that one. So right now, I have everything in place to start adding the functionality that I need, right? So first of all, I have the web template feature scoped to a site. So with that, the web template will be installed on a site. If I want to, I can change that to a farm. That's totally OK. So another thing that I have is the feature that's going to store the version number and the name of my web template in a property bag of the web created of that site. And if you create site collection, it's going to store all that info in the property bag of the root web. And the way it looks like, it's the my template stamp empty element that I have here in the project. And if I open that up, what you will see is declarative approach that is new in SharePoint 2010 to store properties in the property bag of an object. And in this case, I use web. What I have next is a feature responsible for provisioning the welcome page. And that one is scoped on the web because it's provisioned a page that belongs to a list, and list is scoped to a web, right? So with that, what I have here is I have a module that provisions a wiki page, which is probably you cannot see it really here, but you could have seen it here. And if I just scroll to right, you might even see it even better. Yes, that's the web part pages. It should be, yes, it's wiki edit page. Yeah, so because I chose team site as a base, the SPI template that we built automatically checks what kind of welcome page applies to it, right? So if I chose a publishing site, which I will do in a second, you will see that instead of a wiki page that does not really apply to a publishing site, the SharePoint project item template that we built will choose for me a publishing page. And what you can see is that all of those things are bound, they work, and I can start working with that. And the only thing that I need to do, well, that I could do, is first I could add description here, like ISC cool template, and display category. I could change that as well. ISC templates, doesn't really matter. And what I can do now is to start adding new functionality to ONET, and that one here has been copied from the base, which in this case is team site. So let me just show you how the SPI template that we built works with other site types. So if I add another web, let me just close all of that. Yes, I want to save it. And if I add another web template, let me pick the web template, SPI template, add, and from the list of available site definitions, let me choose publishing site, which is here. If I click OK, the only difference here that you will see is, well, you will see actually two of them. So first, if you look at the ONET, you will see that it's not exactly the same. As I said, the SPI template that we built copies the configuration part and a little bit more here, just to ensure that everything works. So it copies the configuration element of the site definition that you chose as a base from the ONET of that IDEF. And the other difference that you might notice is, as I mentioned before, that the welcome page now is a publishing page. And if you look at the ASPX, that's exactly the ASPX that you will get if you create a publishing site. So that's the page that is responsible for bounding the publishing page list item to its page layout. So with that, let's have a look at how we added the web template to our ISC KBase project. So the last one yesterday who showed the code was Paul. Yes. So you should be able to see some of familiar elements here, like, for example, custom actions, KB site, node, that's the list instances, sites assets, site columns, content types, web part pages, right? And in order to be able to wrap all of that into web template, what we did first is we created a web temp. And we did that very easily using our SharePoint project item template. And with that, we went on and we added the additional functionality, which is first the welcome page. So the welcome page for our KB site is a wiki page. And do we have the site now available somewhere? It's on the 206, right? No, we're not needing central admin. Let me just give you a quick glance at what I'm talking about. It's going to load, probably due to all the application pool recycles. No, it's not there. OK, anyway. So on the welcome page of our KB site, what we have is we added a web part and a logo. And as you might have known, the welcome page is a wiki page, and it doesn't have web part zones. So how do you actually add a web part to a wiki page? So the way we did that is if you go to the pages folder and we go to the KB site default module, what we have here is the ASPX file that is actually the page, and then we have the elements.xml that is responsible for creating the welcome page of that wkpstd file. So what you see here, and let me just, there's probably no way that I can change that to a reasonable site and try to explain it all. So what you see here is do we have the zoom out tool? So what you see here is wiki field property, which actually maps to the content of the wiki page that you see. So everything you see on the page is stored in that field. And what you see here is a whole bunch of HTML, that's not XML. And with that, you could see a layout. So on our welcome page, we have a large area on the left and small area on the right. And that allows us to edit contents of the welcome page in a structured way. Yes. Ta-da. Thank you. Of the assistant. Yeah, you want to play on the other one too? Is it the same? That's the question, right? And if we go down a little, you can see the image, a logo that we have, which points to the site's asset ISC logo. But here is something weird. That's the web part that we have, which is put on the welcome page. And how it works, from the deployment point of view, that's the web part. But in order to get it into the content, you have to do two things. First is, you have to deploy it to the WPZ. We're in England. Z, yes. Z is the right way to say this in England. So we have to deploy the web part to the WPZ web part zone. That's first. That's a hidden web part zone that is being added on a runtime every single time the page loads. And that's the web part zone that stores all web parts that have been added to content, no matter if it's a wiki page, publishing page, whatever. The other thing that you have to do is you have to create that weird-looking GUID that starts with a G underscore, and then every single dash in that GUID is replaced with a underscore. That's the way it works. Everything else is going to not work. And then in the place in the content where you want your web part to appear, you have to use that really hideous long line of HTML, which is the only way it's going to work. And if you see here, there is the GUID, but then dashes are back. And if we move on, there is div underscore, and then GUID and dashes. And if we go even further, what you will see is the vid, which is opposite of the div. So that's how SharePoint... It really is. That's the way it works. So that's exactly how SharePoint knows where the container for the web part starts and ends. Yeah, so that's the way it works.
Is that the HTML thing? Not a square, but a circle? The vid?
Yes! That's the tile for web. No. Yeah, so you need all of that to get the web part in content, right? So another thing that we did here, and this is what Miriam said, is we wanted to support creating site collections as well as sites. And the reason we had the problem was that usually, or well, depends on the projects that you work on. What you might have is that you create a web template for the site collection as well as the site. And if you do that, what you can do is that you can take care of the fact that you activate all the required site collections feature in the web template that you use for creating the site collection, and then you don't have to do any additional work on the level of the site because you know that you're working in a site collection, creating using your own web template, and it works. The reason we had to do some additional work was that we chose as a base theme site, which has no idea of our content types, images, web parts. So that's the reason we had to remove all of the site collection scoped features that we had, which is the web parts, sites, assets, and site columns and content types. We had to move those guys out from the ONET and replace them with web scoped features that ensure that they are activated. So how it looks like, if I go to the web template and I will open the ONET, what you will see here is that I have site collection-wise 2 features which are out of the box, and they are activated, and probably we might want to add ensures for those too, because you might just pick another site definition or another web template that has those guys not activated, and then it will break. As for the things that we made ourselves, is the ensure content types, ensure web parts, ensure branding, and those are the features that we created, and in them, we use, if I just pick one, ensure content type, for example, we use a feature receiver where using code, we activate our site collection scoped features just to be sure that everything that we need for our site to work is in place, right? And the last thing that we did was to add branding, which we got from Paul on time.
We got from the design group that's upstairs on the fourth floor.
Yes, and are they presenting that?
Yes, there's a session like this afternoon about how to take their branding and put it into it.
Awesome.
I doubt they know what a bid is.
Yeah, they're probably around, right? Yeah. So what we got was 2 master pages and CSS, and probably and some images, exactly. So what we did first, we added those into the project, and we added them under modules, and then we have one module especially for master pages, which is here. And we have 2 of them, so we have one master page for the front and one for the end. So the system one is on the back. So the one you go to, the one you browse to a app page, and then the isc.master is the one that you see on the site itself. And then we have the style library module that provisions all of the branding, images, assets, and stuff. So as you might expect, based on the name, style library assets are going to be provisioned to the style library, which is site collection scope. And master pages are going to be provisioned to the master page gallery, which is site collection scope as well. So that's going to end up in the catalog's master page. Once again, those are the things that you would activate with, or you would provision with a site collection scoped feature, right? But since we want to be able to support webs as well as site collections, we had to create, once again, a ensure branding feature that checks if the site collection scope branding feature has already been activated, and if not, activated. Anything else that I forgot? Probably not. So that's probably the time for Miriam to create it live. Based on that project, fingers crossed, it's going to work. I have the confidence in it.
I get to do the tricky part.
Yes. My demos are like play, and it works.
Yeah.
They're like play?
Yeah, they're like play, and it works. Like a demo.
So I'll check 2 things. The first thing I'll check is whether Waldeck actually deployed the solution, and that might be why the other site wasn't available.
Blame it on me. Brilliant.
Oh, sorry, not that one. Managed farm solutions. Yeah, so only the branding solution is available now, so we didn't deploy the solution that we're working with at the moment. So that's the first thing that I'll do. We're not activating any features, so the deployment configuration is set to no activation because we will activate all the features in our web template, so we don't need any automatic activation. We had this before. The solution is just to do it again.
Kick it harder.
How big are the odds that it's to blame on IT pros who actually prepare the environment? Yeah, right. That's exactly what I thought.
So we should now see our solution in here. Yeah, that would work a lot better, hopefully. So you can see we deployed this as a farm scoped feature so that it's available throughout our farm. So we are able to create site collections from it directly from the central admin, and we are also able to create sub-sites from it if we're in a site collection that already exists. So the first thing that I'll do is fill in a title. Sorry, dev 207, because that's our session.
Or is it VAD, as opposite to VID?
Only at the end of the session.
Yeah.
I'm left-handed, so yeah, reading right to left might be. Now we get to the tricky part. Oh. And we create our new site collection. We already created a team site, just a normal team site, so that we can show sub-site creation as well. And that's E. So none of the features that we created are activated in this site collection at the moment. This is just a normal team site, out-of-the-box team site. And what you will see is that if we create a sub-site in this team site, that all the features will automatically be activated at the site collection level. So this is our team site. This one already existed. This is our site collection that we just created. So you can see everything's in here. We have the branding at the top in here. We have the image that Waldeck showed. We have the two content areas. We have an article library in here. And if we go to all site content, you can see we have some logging available for us. We can create articles in here. So everything's deployed to the site collection and everything's activated on the site collection through our web template. We don't have to do any manual work for that. So we go to our subsites. I don't trust this, so I'm going to do an IS reset. Just to make sure that everything's reset and available on my subsite, because I just did the deployment. Okay. And then I can create a new site. That's one thing that you might not have shown. If I go into Visual Studio and open up my web template elements file, what you can see in here, that one of the things that we have is the image URL, which points to the _layouts folder. And this is basically the most important thing in our solution that prevents this web template from being a sandbox solution at the moment.
Right.
Because one of the things that it deploys is the image that will be deployed to the layouts directory, so to the file system. And we will see this image when we create a subsite. So really important, right? We want this to look slick. So what you can see is in the screen that we have our own icon for our KB site in here. We'll create a sub 207. Now cross your fingers. It's obviously taking longer. And you can see that we created the subsite. If you look at the URL, you can see that it really is a subsite in our normal out-of-the-box team site. And what you will see also is if we go into the site settings and we go to the site settings of our team site, we will see the content type, for instance. Our custom content types, they are now created on the normal team site, on the out-of-the-box team site, which happen through the ensure features that Waldeck demonstrated before. You will also be able to see, if we go back in here and we go to our site collection features in here, that we have several ISC features in here. You can see that the branding track is much fancier than we are, because they have their own icons for their features. And you can see that all of these are namespaced and that B, they're grouped together, and that they are activated on the site collection on the team site, so that they will actually work for us. And if we go into the sub-site, and you can see that some stuff that's not deployed to the site collection level, but that's deployed to the sub-site level, like, for instance, some site assets, library that's available on all sites, so also on sub-sites, not just on the site collection. So we have our own logo in here that's displayed on the homepage, and we have our own KB styles, which add some of the styles to the web part. And if we go back to the content, we also have site pages, and you can see that we have our own homepage, the KB site homepage, that displays all of that stuff on there. So that's basically one of the best practices that you can use for creating sites based on web templates, or creating web templates to create sites with. Again, think about whether you want to activate all of those site collection scoped features. Think about how it will impact the site collection itself. If you let site collection administrators create their own subsites and they mess up their site collection, then they will probably not be happy even though they could create their site. So be aware of that. And also be aware, if you ever want to save your site, be able to save your site as a template, if any subsite activates the publishing features, you will never be able to do that again. So be aware of that as well. And with that, we go back to the deck. Are there any questions about creating the web template? Okay, cool. Well, in that case, thank you very much for attending.